Meus, ordo, deridet, female misogyny as perceived by Isotta Nogarola and Cereta. Meus, ordo, deridet, writes Isotta Nogarola in her letter to Guarino Veronese, written in 1437, expressing her frustration and disappointment on how she is treated and criticized by other women. And this is only an indication of how learned women were treated not only by the male scholars and humanists of the time, but also by the female society, who could not perceive their standing as equal colleagues and scholars as well. This depicts the general context within which the intellectual women had to prove the real substance of their education, intellect, and even personality. Historical background. During humanism and early Renaissance, women's place was confined to household activities, and their sole cause was to bear children and to take care of their families. Male authority in all aspects of daily life and in society was not to be questioned, especially by women who were fortunate enough to be educated and also to nourish their intellect alongside notable men. This was common knowledge shared by the church, the society, men and women, naturally, except for those women who were actually well educated. In order to enter this sphere of masculine sovereignty and be able to establish themselves as equal individuals with great academic and intellectual qualities, women had to endure a long way of criticism based on doubts related not only to their intellect but also to their ability to enter this otherwise unreachable realm. Moreover, the biblical passages were very explicit on the female duties and responsibilities and were not to be disputed. If a woman dared to go beyond the limits of her household, she was considered as a great danger that had to be eliminated or at the very least disregarded. However, during this historical period, women were receiving a basic education and training, mainly by their mothers or governesses, focused on household duties. If their education and knowledge were exceeding this level, they were accused of having abolished their feminine identity and qualities, or that they have been involved in abhorrent actions such as incest. La querelle des femmes. In order to escape this destiny of constant and unfair confinement during the 15th century, well-educated women started an intellectual debate through which they could focus on matters related to their nature, social status, permission to study and produce intellectual work, and also stand alongside men scholars. Christine de Pizan is considered to be the pioneer of this debate, who is projecting matters on misogyny and phylogeny through her work, and the personalities emerged from it. The debate also promotes the idea of a multitasking woman exceeding her traditional role as a wife and mother by taking part in the social, political, and cultural life of her society. Isotta Nogarola and Cereta are two of the female intellectuals that largely contributed to this debate, with their remarkable qualities as humanists, philosophers, poets, and scholars in general. Isotta Nogarola and Cereta. Isotta, 1418 to 1466, and Cereta, 1469 to 1499, share, as many other educated women, a common aspiration to play a part in the intellectual life of their time and their society. Isotta Nogarola, a major intellectual and humanist personality, received a fine education in her birthplace, Verona. Her work demonstrates her profound knowledge of the ancient Greek and Latin authors, as well as her ability to publicly deliver speeches and compose letters addressed to other male or female scholars. Cereta shares the same qualities as Isotta, being herself an important female humanist of the 15th century. In her work, she is referring to personal difficulties or everyday matters that a woman encounters and has to face, such as the lack of opportunities in education or the inevitable fate of either marriage or religious isolation. The epistles. In April 10, 1437, Isotta Nogarola composes a letter addressed to Guarino Veronese, describing the difficult situation he has put her in due to the lack of a response to her previous letter sent a year earlier. In that letter, written in October 11, 1436, Isotta is praising Guarino for his greatness, offering her gratitude to him for having honored her with a eulogy and asking him to review her works, applying his knowledge and wisdom. However, Guarino never replied to this encomiastic epistle, provoking Isotta's concern, which is projected in the latter letter. In the beginning of the second letter, Isotta describes her feelings and resentment of as being a woman has caused only trouble and brought only sorrow to her. In particular, she writes to Guarino, and I quote, "Since I often ponder what the worth of women is, it occurs to me that to bemoan my fate, since I was born female and women are ridiculed by men in both word and deed. I raise this issue privately, so I will not have to ask in public how it happens that you consider me a joke. For I am distressed as never before that you have been unfair to me in what you have written." However, it seems that this passage is not the most indicative one for her bitterness, but rather the one where she refers to another type of concern. Her complaints related to the mockery she endures, originated by other women in her society. Thus, she writes, "For I am ridiculed throughout the city. The women mock me." Isotta feels emotionally devastated when she realizes that not only men but also women seek to debase her, to challenge and question her intellect, and to undermine her efforts to join the intellectual circles governed by men. She declares that she has become unhappy due to this situation, in which she has to request once more her correspondents' kindness and support in order to overcome all this male and female disdain. Later, in November 1st, 1487, Laura Cereta also composes an epistle in which she deals with a similar situation, the envy of women who attack other women, criticize, mock and ridicule them, because the latter have the ability to stand as equal to men in terms of intellect. She addresses this letter to Lucilia Vernacula, expressing also herself the resentment she feels due to all this gossip and criticism she receives. She emphasizes even more than Isotta the misogyny she faces, coming from other women, stressing the following, and I quote, "But I cannot bear these babbling and chattering women, glowing with drunkenness and wine, whose imputed words harm not only our sex but even more themselves. Empty-headed, they put their heads together and draw lots from a stockpot to elect each other, but on any women who excel they seek out and destroy with the venom of their envy." In general, this letter abounds with characterizations of the simple-minded women whose inactivity of mind maddens these raving women, or rather Megaeras, who cannot bear even to hear the name of a learned woman. Laura Cereta does not accept the female misogyny that emerges from all these envious comments towards successful and virtuous women. Female misogyny. The very first notion that becomes apparent when reading all the humanist and early Renaissance works is misogyny, meaning the contempt for women. It is an idea that turned into a traditional topic shared by male humanists and sensed by the female ones. However, misogyny could derive not only from men who considered women as inferior to them in terms of intellect, social status, academic, social and political skills, and generally as a human being. Misogyny was also coming from women. Female misogyny was perceived as a great insult towards learned women, being originated by their own sex. Misogyny is an ideological term that became dominant in humanist literature and also in the cultural context that learned women had to confront in order to support and protect their decision to dedicate their lives to the literary studies and become intellectually equal to men, worthy of the academic circles. Christine de Pizan was the woman determined to oppose the long list of male writers, philosophers and moralists who demanded that women should be subjected and obedient to men who valued all biblical references to the wicked, false, insufficient women to be an irrefutable evidence of the female inferiority. The concept of female misogyny is evident in the letters of Isotta Nogarola and Laura Cereta. Both women are referring to their order and their own sex that adopt a male attitude towards them, engaging into spiteful comments related to their boldness that is attributed not to their literacy, knowledge, or their distinguished educational status, but rather to their sinful sexuality. Little wonder that both writers refer to the poisonous tongues that belong to no other than the women who are unable to acknowledge the difficulties that a learned woman has to overcome. In particular, Isotta Nogarola earnestly asks Guarino to protect her reputation in the following passage, and I quote, "I beg you to help me in this distress of mine, and also, if I can speak more frankly, in the matter of my reputation. And I ask you not to allow yourself to dishonor me by your actions. But you would help me, since I am lacking in literary skill, if you lend me your great dignity to my style, and if you put a stop to those cruel tongues that call me a tower of audacity, and say that I should be sent to the ends of the earth for my boldness." The passage from Laura Cereta's letter could follow the above mentioned and complete Isotta's description. I quote, "Thus, these women, lazy with sloth and insouciance, abandon themselves to an unnatural vigilance. Like scarecrows hung in gardens to ward off birds, they tackle all those who come into range with a poisonous tongue. Why should it behoove me to find this barking, snorting pack of provocators worthy of my forbearance, when important and distinguished gentlewomen always esteem and honor me?" Eventually, it becomes evident that both women try to maintain a certain level of dignity and protect not only their reputation, but also their right to be bold and follow their chosen path to education and knowledge. Both letters depict the challenges they face and the great effort they have to make in order to achieve what seems impossible, to demand that everyone, men and women, should respect them for what they have to offer to the academic and intellectual world, while recognizing that this engagement does not deprive them of any female qualities or lead them to any inappropriate activities. With only a few decades apart, Isotta Nogarola and Laura Cereta, both prominent humanists and writers of the Querelle des Femmes, focus on the same subject, the female misogyny they themselves have to confront. Their remarkable works give prominence to this issue as they try to overcome all the difficulties that emerge due to this unfair reaction coming from their own order towards them. For these well-educated, respectable and highly esteemed women, it is unacceptable that even their own sex is not able to recognize the value of being capable to claim their right to be considered as equal to men, partially because of their own attitude. For it was usual for men to consider women as incapable of engaging in what was viewed as male occupation, but it should have not been the same for women, who should regard education as a powerful weapon and a most useful tool for any improvement of their social status and their lives in general. Thank you.